Hey guys, this is Gabby here with Exited. This is the podcast where we talk to founders, talk about them, their lives, their grind, their burnouts, their exits, and all the things that even come after the exit. Today, we're going to be talking to Andy Smith. Andy is an entrepreneur based in Atlanta who has experienced some great exits. And I can't wait to have you guys listen to everything that Andy had to say. And here we go. All right, guys. Well, welcome to Exited, the podcast where we talk with founders from the topics of from grind to sale. And today we have Andy Smith. Andy is joining us from Atlanta, Georgia. And Andy and I actually met last year in Miami at Miami Tech Week. This would have been in 2024. And so, Andy, welcome to Exited.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So fun to be here, and such an interesting title of the podcast, which I so relate to in entrepreneurship. So I love it. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I actually am very proud that I came up with it on my own. Really how the title came up is I obviously, what do we do when we're trying to find information? We talk to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT wasn't giving me anything. And because I was like, hey, give me like something funky, something different, combination of words. And suddenly it actually dawned on me, exited. So I'm like, woo, it was
I love
good. It
it.
was good. Well,
So
that
good.
is great, Andy. So, something that everybody knows about these podcasts is that I don't know everybody's story, like the details. So we're here to kind of talk with you about your story as a founder, as an entrepreneur. And, I know that from what I know, you have a fantastic story. So I guess to kick it off, so tell me, when did you find out that you were an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so you don't really know, right? There's no like hidden button that just tells you, hey, today I'm going to wake up and be an entrepreneur. And so I started to realize when I was working in the corporate world, and I started as an engineer, went into the corporate world as an engineer, went and became a sales engineer, and then realized I was finding myself very frustrated every day at work. And I'm like, why am I so frustrated? I would come home and tell my wife, I'm frustrated. I didn't know why. And what I know now is that I was feeling like I was being put into a box, right? And so when you're in that
Right.
box as an entrepreneur inside of you, you get frustrated. And so this was chugging along 2000 to 2007 timeframe. The frustration continues. Finally, a coworker looked at me and said, Andy, why, if you're so frustrated, why don't you do something about it? And I was like, oh, that's a clever idea. I should have thought about that because the world needs more positivity, not negativity. And they certainly don't need
Right.
me complaining every day in a business job. And
Right.
so my first co-founder called me in August of 2007 and said, hey, Andy, I've got an idea. Let's start a business in the US. He lived in the Netherlands. So he was a Dutch
Okay.
guy, met an American completely on the other side of the pond. And in August of 2007, we launched our very first business on a Friday night, and we were off into the grind and into the trenches.
Right. And that is a very common thread is feeling caged,
Yeah.
right? In my case, I keep sharing, I actually realized I'm an entrepreneur and I didn't realize it until like last year. But I can see it throughout my life how I just didn't want to conform with the boxes I was put in like ever in my life. And, you know, so that's something that's so interesting. Like we don't find out until we experience things, right? And that's the beauty. Do you feel like some people say like you're constantly solving problems, like in your mind, you're like, what's the problem with that? Let's fix that. And is that something that it's part of you?
Yeah. And so I say it's contributed to the engineering brain, but it's really always been there. Like it's not the engineering brain that caused it. It was just the problem solving ability. And that is the number one thing in entrepreneurship is you're solving problems. I mean, from a market problem where you build the business around to then when you turn around and look at the business, every day is freaking hard and everything is a
Right.
problem. And you don't know how to
Right.
tackle that every single day. And so yes, it is a constant dilemma of problem solving and opportunity, building the bridge to solution, right?
That's amazing. So in '07, when you and your partner out of the Netherlands were launching your first, what problem were you solving?
So we had been in the oil and gas industry and the clean energy industry. And the company that we worked to was a great Belgium company, a pretty big Belgium company. they had diversified product lines. And so they had launched a product into the market that was a clean energy oil and gas play. So it burned off waste gas from a mine, an oil and gas facility, landfill, whatever. And so we saw an opportunity to launch a similar product into the market that and build a business. And our goal from day one was just to replace our salaries. Like we weren't thinking about exiting. We weren't thinking about making millions or gazillions or billions. We were just thinking about how do we replace our salary and get out of the box. And so that was our initial sort of thing. But we were launching an emerging, innovative oil and gas clean energy product.
Right. I mean, that's pretty, I mean, when you tell me oil and gas, I'm like, oh, that's really complex. Was it complex, like scientifically complex? Like, was it, I mean, you had been in the oil and gas industry before, right? And then you were, okay.
Yes.
So was it learning a lot or you already kind of brought some of background knowledge?
So here's a question I get nowadays, and I didn't appreciate it at the time. The question I get nowadays is, do you partner with people or do you want to go at it alone? And my answer today is 100% partnership, collaboration with others. At the time, though, I didn't realize that. At the time, I didn't realize I was super naive to entrepreneurship. I was super naive to building a business. I didn't know anything. And I was probably in my mid to late 20s. And what I realize now, if I look back, I had an amazing partner who knew really well technology. He knew how to engineer the thing. And he had a sprinkling of entrepreneurship and business in him. More business, a little bit of entrepreneurship. I was business development with a sprinkling of engineering. So we had the perfect team of two hungry dudes from opposite sides of the world who had a neat little sort of overlap and were ready to go build something from scratch. And we bet the house on it. Like we literally took a $26,000 home equity line of credit.
Right.
That was our investment. He put his investment
in. Crazy.
And we were off.
Were you married at the time or were you?
Yeah.
Like,
and I look back
was your wife like,
I don't know if I would do it again, but I was, yes, I was married with a kid. The kid would have been 5 years old. Okay. And very soon after we had our second kid. And so, yeah, there was no plan B. Plan B for us, which we got to eventually, was looking for jobs. That was our only plan B. And so very risky. But I also see with partnership, right? Like I celebrated an anniversary yesterday with the wife, and you need that partner in your life.
Right.
Or otherwise you have to have that understanding, balancing partner, because entrepreneurship is not for everyone. And it's scary and it's risky and it's weird and it's, uncertain. So you need that partner who understands and who will back you up in all of that.
Right. And, it's interesting because you need the right business partner. And then you have, if you're married, you need the right partner to work with you, right? Because it's not it's an ups and downs. It's emotional, right? So wait, so how did you meet the guy in Netherlands again? Remind me.
So we worked together. So he was like a functional, like a matrix boss, right? The matrix structure of organizations. So we had worked together and we had known each other for probably 3 years. He had sold his business to the company and had been there for about 4 years. And so
so he was like maybe doing an earn out. Was he?
Yeah,
he's earn
he was
out.
doing an earn out, and then and so when that was over, he was looking for his next big thing, and that's where it all started.
And he's like, I'm going to do it with Andy.
Yeah, and I'm so thankful for him as well. And we never fought a day in our lives. It was great. We had a lot of pushback and a lot of challenging of one another, but never. It was always a very amicable, respectful relationship.
Yeah. And, and not every founder or entrepreneur can say that, right? Like we found you were with the right people, because being with the wrong people can actually destroy the business. We've seen, and our background is with legal, is we see when people just don't have a meeting of the minds, that actually results in literally destroying an entire business that you might have been building for years and years. So how do you know that this is the right person? Like, do you have, and I mean, this is 2007, we're talking, this is almost 20 years ago. And obviously you probably didn't have the wisdom you have today, right? You learn so much, right? Throughout your life, you build wisdom, you build knowledge, information. How did you know, or did you not know at the time, Do we get along? Like there's so much like these days, like personality tests, like what's your background, like background checks. How did you just go all in and like kind of like cross your fingers?
That's a great question. I had known him for some time, so we knew each other's. We knew how each other worked. We knew personally. We knew each other. So there was some background and some history there, but I didn't know how that was going to be day one of starting a new business, right? And when you risk everything on the line, and so I didn't know, and I didn't know that that would work out well. And after, like you said, almost 20 years of doing it, like I've met some people, I've had some bad partnerships that's gone wrong, and that can cost you years and years of struggle and destroying businesses, destroying
Yeah,
lives, all that. And nowadays I'm very it's a dating phase, right? And then you kind of marry.
right.
And I found that the right people just make it. And so I've seen other people do it really well. And it starts with like an interview process of what am I looking for? What do I know about myself? What do I need as a founder or a co-founder to
Right.
complement me? And I think you learn that down the road as you go, but it's so hard. I don't have a
Yeah.
secret formula. I now can say this is the type of person who would work really well with me and fits me really well. And then after you do that, still you have to determine your role in that relationship because
Right.
even today, if I start a business or co-found a business with a partner, I'm not always the leader of that. I might be someone who's taking advice from a younger person if they're a
Right.
subject matter expert. So it's hard. I don't have any at the time I didn't know anything. Nowadays, it's fun to kind of first learn who you are and then be able to learn
Yeah.
your your strengths and weaknesses, but really your blind spots, and then team up with someone
Yeah.
who can help you do that.
Yeah. To your point, I'm about to say something that's probably unconscionable for many lawyers to say, but in my experience, it doesn't matter how much you paper up a deal. It really comes down to the humanity of people. Like you get a good partner and you may not even need the document. Like, I recommend that people do it, right? I don't want them to get the wrong
Mhm.
impression, get the paper. But at the end of the day, you can do great business with great people and you can do really bad business with bad people no matter what papers you have, how many lawyers looked at it, and how many big firms, small firm, it doesn't matter who looked at it. It's going to go bad if the human is not right on the other side, right? And it
That's so
usually
true.
comes down to, so in the, let's say the partners that maybe the partnerships didn't go as planned, do you think there was like, was it greediness? Was it like lack of transparency? What are the qualities of people that are just not good to do business with?
Yeah, for me, it's those things, right? It's like the greed is a huge one. But I mean that will tank it
Yeah.
immediately. That's probably the biggest one, right? Like humility and understanding and trust are enormous. But if two partners don't trust each other, immediately the relationship breaks down,
Yeah.
and then it's just fighting. And so yeah, you nailed it. I mean, it's those things. It's those qualities.
Yeah. Trust is a big one. I recently read The Speed of Trust.
Oh, that's interesting.
Really, really, really good book. Probably one you need to read over and over your life. But trust is an art to learn to trust, to learn to give trust. It's just big. And I think trust is everything in business. Do you agree? I mean,
I agree. And it's funny because nowadays with this social footprint, right, you can kind of go and see what are people doing online and how are they expressing themselves socially on any social platform. And then when you meet that person, it's the same person that you know socially
right.
in real life. And it's funny because if you meet someone who is strikingly different in person than they might be on that you've seen them throughout social media, because now you can build breadcrumbs up
Yeah.
uh, of a connection of a network through social media. But when you meet that person in real life, like, is that the same person? Right? Is that the same? So that's another factor of trust. And it's just so incredibly important.
That's such a great point because social media, again, the biggest issue is that we all put our best versions of ourselves and then, we also are human and we have
Right.
defects and we come with issues and that's a really great point. I actually hadn't thought about it. But yeah, I
Uh,
recently heard, go ahead.
I was just going to tell you a funny story. The talking about finding partners. So I was I was dating a potential partner, right? They were looking for a certain operating partner in a company. He was up in New York City. And I went up to meet him in person for the first time. And I had talked over the phone, had all the different stuff. So we met in person. It was great. We then went to lunch. They were watching how I opened up my napkin and I had my plate and how I put my forks down. So if my forks were straight or a little crooked, and
Right.
also like the phone, like when I put my phone on the table,
Like facing
how
up
it
or
was,
facing down.
yeah. And was it even or against the lines with the side of the table? Did
Oh,
it line up? And
okay.
because what they were looking for was structure. Like, is this person able to not only come in and be a good human and all that, but are they able to structureize their business so that they can scale it? And so it
That's
was
interesting.
so interesting and such an eye-opening thing because after that, we went to the little happy hour, right? And they were like, "Hey, we've been watching the whole time, and it's been a test the whole time." And I was like, "Whoa, this is so neat! Like, what did you do? Unwind it on me because I'd love to hear it and use it and figure it out." And yeah. So
Yeah.
it was. I'm. It's funny to be a student of the game and always be learning because you're always watching other people and taking what you love and seeing
Yeah.
if it fits your way and just
Yeah.
learning.
That's interesting. I actually never had somebody tell me that they had been, in a test. I have had deals where I heard, anecdotes where, like if, we're usually on the sell side and some of our sell guys, stories where they've been invited to a social event and then they participated in a social event. And then, after the close 2 months later, the buyer was like, well, at that same kind of happy hour, we were watching you. We wanted to see how your real persona. So it is important. I mean, that's a good point, right? Because everything is done online, everything is Zoom, everything is chat, the new generation, all they do is they just text each other. Like my kids
Mhm.
are teenagers and I'm like, it's almost like dating by text.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so
It's,
funny. But in business, business is still done and should be done face to face, right?
yeah, I agree.
That's
It's
yeah,
funny because I went down to Tech Week this past week for 2025. And it was interesting because technology right now is evolving so rapidly, so fast. Everything's moving to a large language model or an AI this or an AI that. And entire industries are getting disrupted by the thing called AI, right? Or automation or
right,
technology. But what you saw at that last week in Miami at the tech event was human people getting together to do business,
right.
people going to events after parties to talk and to share and to learn and to grow and coming to events to listen to Pitbull or Damon John talk about their experiences. And I love the human side. I think the human side is only going to get more and more. I'm doubling down on the human side because relationships are going to be more important than ever. And business is done with
Yeah,
people.
I agree. And you know what? The sad part I think is like younger people are online so much and they're not having eye to eye contact with teenagers these days. The kids, the younger kids, even some young adults, they won't look at you in the eyes. And I'm thinking one of my theories is the kids that are good with eye contact, the kids that are actually um, able to speak to an adult are the ones going to be the leaders of tomorrow because technology is doing great things, but also, leaving, some kids are going to stay behind in terms of the human interaction because they're just not
Yeah.
comfortable. Even our generation, because I think you and I are about the same age. I don't know. Do you love talking on the phone? I mean, I'm not as much. Like, I'd rather text. Like, if somebody calls me, leave a voicemail. If it's somebody that I have some level of like trust, I'm texting you back. So I don't know. That's good and bad, but we should be picking up the phone a lot more than we do.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I mean, I remember my first job was sales engineer role for that Belgian company. There was an older gentleman. He was in charge of a country manager, and he spent every moment on that phone talking to potential customers because he couldn't see them. If he could see them,
Right.
he would have been there with them. And it's just that human element side. And yeah, it's so critical.
You can't replace it.
And the cool, I mean, so I've plugged into my local university and I go and so this afternoon is one of these events where young entrepreneurs will think of an idea, right? And they'll come present it to a panel of OGs who are sitting there giving away a little bit of the university's money to help them grow.
Right.
Most of the founders are tech founders, so it's something techy. And very few will look you in the eye. Very few will come and shake your hand before the presentation. Very few will remember any of that. Now they know their stuff, right? They know their stuff. But when you meet the one who comes up to you afterwards and talk and says, "Hey, I loved what you did. Can you tell me more? Hey, can I intern for you and just be a part of it?" And have that, I don't know, it's that charisma to talk to people, the human factor.
Right.
They just they are just I just see them accelerating into the future.
Right. You said a word, the magic word, charisma.
Oh,
How
yeah.
important is charisma in the life of a founder? I mean, is it a trend that the more charismatic you are, the more, because I feel like, you get more influence, right? You get the sales going. People like you. They want to talk to you. They want to hear you. How important is charisma? How important has been charisma in your life, I guess, or in your, growth as an entrepreneur?
I think for me, it's been hugely important because I've
Right.
always played the business development face of the company, brand builder kind of role, right? And I didn't know
Right.
that going into it. I just kind of fell into it because it felt more natural. And what a lot of people miss when you're starting and launching a company is that brand will come eventually, but it doesn't come day one. And so you've got to go sell your face off, basically. You got to go sell something to make your business take off. And so and to sell something, you're trying to understand and communicate your value proposition to the problem that the customer has. And so charisma and empathy go hand in hand because I think it's so important to understand the buyer side and be able to communicate and meet them where they are into the seller side. And I think it's so important in entrepreneurship. I think it's so important in raising kids. I think it's so important in
Yeah.
meeting a friend on the street because it's just how, and maybe another word would just be, I care for you. I care for you. I want to pour into you. And charisma is a piece of that. So it's real. It's not sleazy. It's just more, I want to give back to you. How can I help you? And, and that's, yeah, I built my career on it for sure.
Right. Empathy, and another good one, right? Like oftentimes, especially once say we've had an exit, and I want to go back to talking about some of this scaling in a minute, but empathy is not necessarily paired up with the word money or wealth or,
Right.
there's, but I think they should, you should be, I think, because I think entrepreneurship is leadership, right? And leadership has to have empathy. So there's like, right, this connection.
Totally.
What are your thoughts? Like, I meet founders that don't seem empathetic, especially in certain circles. There's a money aura here, and maybe some elitist things. What are your empathy? Let's talk about a little bit more about empathy. Would you have been as successful as you are? We'll talk a little bit more about your exits, but empathy, right?
No,
And
because you got to trust. You got to bring like when you're like we bootstrapped it, right? So when you're bootstrapping a business, you got to bring people got to trust you. They gotta believe that you're selling a vision that they understand and they can get behind because they're taking an
right,
enormous risk. And so I think first you've got to meet people where they are. You've got to build that trust really quickly. You've got to continue to show up so that you, as you said, that speed of trust that you get there over time and
right,
they continues because ultimately your first employee has to trust you. Your 74th employee has to trust you and want to come on this journey with you. And so
right,
it's a critical part. And I'll say too, I mean, not everybody has to be, the superhuman qualities out the gazunko of everything, right?
right,
That's where
right.
the word partnership comes in my mind
Completely.
because you could be the best subject matter expert around your thing. You could know it hands and out, and you could be just a curmudgeon who has no people skills at all. But
Right.
guess what? You could partner with someone who loves that, and they could be that bridge for you. And so that's an opportunity for us all.
Right. And then again, going back to dating those potential partners, and then the words I think we've used here today, which is it's a marriage.
Yeah,
You're
marriage.
technically married to your spouse and you're also married to your partner. And it is that an important, trust relationship where we have the ups and downs together. That is so important. But okay, so with your so let's go back. So you've been building this renewable industry company with the guy of the Netherlands. Was that a business where you like did fundraising, or was that a business where you were kind of bring money in, money that we reinvest in the company? Because I think, there are some companies where obviously you go out, you raise money, seed money, all of that, Series A, maybe even beyond. And then there's the companies that we have an idea, right? And then we bring money in and we reinvest and we kind of grow more organically. Was your first venture the organic one, or more like the let's just pump some money into it and get the
Yeah,
business
yeah,
going?
yeah. So my first venture was totally bootstrapped, and we didn't even know you could raise money. And
That's cool.
and so we were
Yeah.
that naive, right? And so we set out to simply build it based on one job at a time. And it was very interesting because we started it in August. We thought we were going to get a bunch of early customers. We didn't get any, right?
Hmm.
And so our first customer was actually in, I would say, month 5 or so. And it was a Mexican customer
Wow.
with a Chilean engineering firm. So it wasn't in the US. It was completely outside of what we had thought.
Wow.
And that was month 5 or 6. Month 4, we got sued by the company that we left
Oh,
for a
wow.
non-compete violation, which we didn't have. We didn't have a non-compete document in
Right. But
place
they still try. They still would try. The lawyers would try to fight it out.
because it ties you up in litigation, right? You have to
Right.
pay for it. You got to go
It
hire a
slows
lawyer.
you down. It
Slows you
puts a
down.
cloud over you and it
Yep.
makes you afraid.
Yeah. And so, one
Wow.
day at dinner time, I get a knock on the door with a being served
The
on
summons.
right before
Oof.
Christmas. And it was a 80-page document. And I'm like, oh crap. So then you find an
Wow.
attorney, right? And you have to pay a retainer, 10,000. So
Yeah.
we dumped, we dumped a ton of money into just trying to stay alive early on. And so you got to get really gritty, really grindy, and really, really, really creative as to how you're going to get that first customer and then how you're going to
Wow.
structure your deals going forward, right?
Wow. Wow. Yeah. So yeah, the L word, litigation. Nobody likes it,
Yes.
but I feel like, if you have something good going on, they're gonna come after you. I mean, somebody will. I mean, if they feel threatened, they will, and then they'll use the lawyers as their tool. So, and then they grind. So, by the way, not easy to have a lawsuit because you're still bootstrapped. I mean, you just left a job, you have a kid, your wife is probably stressed out, like now we're getting sued. That's not fun. But I
It's
mean,
no fun.
your passion's drive. What's driving this?
Yeah, you have to find that inner gear, right? And you have to believe in yourself so much that you can make it. You have to be almost optimistic plus 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 even more. And so
Right.
you get hungry and you get creative and you start to learn like what am I foundationally relying on? What do I go to when I feel the most stress? How am I going to shake that off and be positive, right? And it gets you at your core of who you are in entrepreneurship, and it can happen really quickly, or it can happen after an exit, right? It can happen
Right.
anytime on the journey.
Right. Wow. Okay. So obviously Lhasa didn't stop you. You guys continued scaling. Let's talk a little about the scale, the grind, the long hours, the burnout. Did you have burnouts with that first venture?
I'll tell you one thing about the lawsuit, and this is you never know, right? Everything kind of can be a blessing in disguise, but we get that lawsuit,
Yeah.
and to get out of the lawsuit in month 4 of litigation, we went to mediation. So we're sitting in a
Oh,
room, you know this very well, but we're sitting in a room
yeah.
in our table with our attorneys, and the other folks are in another room, and their attorneys. You got a mediator walking back and
Yeah.
forth.
That's just fun. I'm sure it's fun, walk in the park. Crazy.
We got there at 8 a.m. and we left at 11 p.m. and it was the whole day. And what we ended up giving them was, hey, we're not going to sell this particular product to the market for 2 years. And we're going to put it on our website that we don't sell that product. We had an order from the Mexican customer at the time to sell a product. And we were
Right.
like, holy crap, what are we going to do? We had to go find a product now to serve that quotation that we sold to
Mm.
Mexican customer with a Chilean engineering firm. And it caused us to get really creative, really resourceful, found the right product. That product ended up eventually allowing us to scale,
Wow.
where the other product that we had originally thought we were going to go after has not gone to market yet. And so things
So
happen in
that's
weird
a
ways.
blessing in disguise.
100% a blessing in disguise. And
Yeah.
it just, a core principle for me is faith. And it just reinforced the
Yes.
faith. And what it does too is it says, okay, now I went through a hard time. I can go through another hard time because I believe
Yeah.
in what I believe in. And I have seen that perseverance really matters. And so you develop that. I don't know if it's that trust in yourself or that willingness that, okay, that door closed. That's not always a bad thing. I can be open-minded to where the next door is going to open
Right.
because
Yeah.
every day is hard, right? And no matter where you are in your entrepreneurial journey, it's hard. Exiting a business, that's hard too. I mean,
That's hard.
it's hard. And so every bit of it is hard and you find those muscles and you develop those over time. And yeah, I mean I'll say too, a little bit it's been on my mind recently is creativity. And it's like that Mexican customer that we got.
Yeah.
I had to fly down alone to Mexico and do a deal ultimately in Spanish. They knew a little bit of English. I knew
Yeah.
not much Spanish. And there were at least 17 people in the room and little old
Wow.
Andy. I was scared to death. And so I asked a friend, his dad was retired. He was, I forget
Yeah.
what country he was from, if his dad would go with me and act as a business partner in the deal because he spoke
Right.
Spanish. And so this gentleman, I fed him and we ate together and he sat in on the meetings just to make sure things were like okay. And
Yeah.
you got to do crazy stuff you wouldn't normally do or that they don't teach you in corporate America, right?
Yeah. And I feel like sometimes you need to step into that persona that you are in your mind or want to be in your mind, but maybe you feel like I'm not there yet, but you gotta go and play. Like you have to go and start running and like just keep running, jump over the hoops or go over the mountain, whatever you need to do. I mean, I totally agree. It really it's all here.
So,
Like you have to invent, it's 100% in your head.
I asked a mentor 5 years ago. We were talking about when you start a company, you launch it, right? And when you get to momentum phase, that's where every founder wants to be because that's when you start to really scale and grow and have fun. In our first business, we got to momentum phase right before we exited. And I was like,
Right.
hey, man, we're starting this new business again, business number 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Stupid hard. We're having the same problems and struggles we had, 20 years ago. What determines the speed between launching your business and momentum phase? I was like,
Right.
what do you think determines that? And he was like, 2 things, Andy, mindset and resourcefulness. That's
Right.
it. If you have
It's
those
in
two
your
things, which is
head.
what you just said, right? It's in your mind and knowing and being able to put yourself out there and break away. That's what I loved about Miami last week. I got there and it's this immigrant mentality that I think
Right.
entrepreneurs need, where it's like, okay, I've
Oh
landed in
man,
this
you're
place.
preaching to the choir. But
But
yes,
people don't know that. My
absolutely.
community does not know
Absolutely.
that. My community doesn't know it. Where
Absolutely.
you get into a
Let's talk
place
about it. Yeah.
and you have to now go make business to survive.
Yeah.
That's your
In a
job.
different language, in a different country, in a different culture, with different people who may not understand you.
So the
Right?
question is then, so how do you do that, right? How do you do that?
Right.
Well, you got to take every limit that you have on you that you've put on yourself or that others have hung on
Yeah.
for you that you're carrying and you got to strip it away. Like I'm running on the
Right.
boardwalk and I'm seeing a lady shooting fitness videos in full display of everybody and she's got
Crazy.
her whole community online. Why? She doesn't care what people think. She don't care that people are sitting on the benches judging her. Some are like, ooh, some are like,
Right.
and so she doesn't care.
Yeah.
She's on the
Yeah.
limits off. Or you've got a gentleman from Cuba who got into the United States and is now driving Uber or Lyft and learning English and learning his ways.
Yes.
That immigrant mentality, I saw it last week and I was like, how do you win at the game? One, you have to take all the limits off. Two, you have to be just insanely creative. Take
Yeah.
all limits off and get wildly creative and forget what everybody else is saying.
And the resourceful part of it too, because you don't have the resources. I recently, I've launched a couple of businesses, besides the law firm that we run here. And, I recently went to an event in Dallas, and I met someone who came from the oil and gas, a person about my age and, comes from generations of influence and abilities. And I'm like, man, it must be really cool to just like, you have a family name and you just start, but for me, it's like I'm the first one here. So I'm like, why do we have, I remember when I launched the firm, I had like this old computer and I think my husband and I gave the firm like a $5,000 loan to like buy I don't know what we needed, email, whatever. And it's like, old computer, and I'm actually happy to be like, I've had all these other computers we bought. We got iPads now, we got beautiful stuff, but we started with what we had, which is that old computer that we brought from like, I don't know, who knows, from California, way back in the day. It's zero money to invest when you're poor, you're paying your student debt. So yeah, I love it. I love it. And I mean, that's a great point. And we need more of that hunger, because I think some of our country has become very complacent, we're very comfortable because nobody understands, like everybody's doing pretty well. Like, obviously we have poverty, but we don't have like kids like literally starving
Right.
at the rate that in some other countries, or some of the other issues that are come from the country, but going back to that thought, everything is in your head. But one of the other things I see, we have some people coming to the US with the abundance mentality, but we also have a lot of people with a more the scarcity mindset, because they do have scarce resources back home. And so they come here with that. And then you get into the cheating, the cutting corners, and doing things. And so I work with a lot of immigrant, or call it foreign founders.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, we have these conversations about, guys, this is plenty. There's plenty here for everybody. There's plenty clients for everybody. And but it's a joy, honestly, to work with a segment, because they really are looking for every possibility. It's challenging.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that scarcity, that's a big one. I grew up in small town Alabama and small town USA, right? And so
Yeah.
there you had people who had really, some have never left the town, or they would do an annual vacation, and it was,
Right.
call it lower to medium middle class. And if you had something, that meant they didn't have something, right? And
Right.
so that's a huge one. And that abundance piece, that's a whole different light switch in itself. And you can switch that into there's enough for everyone. We're launching a little AI automation agency, and I had a call with a potential founder, and he was talking about, aren't there so many of these companies doing it? I'm like, I don't know. Right now, we're just collaborating. World's
Right.
changing so fast. I mean, it wasn't a
Yeah.
competition or he versus them or any of that. It was just a collaboration and a partnership. So it's a different mindset, totally. And I
Yeah.
love that abundant versus scarcity topic. That's a fun
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. And you mentioned faith, which is also, a big part of my family and my background also. And it took time to step into that abundance mindset, which is not just like, oh, let's just believe in abundance. It's just like live it. Live
Mhm.
like there's enough for you. Build your business like there is enough for you. Because ultimately, my belief is God put us all on earth and there's enough for everybody. And where there is scarcity for others is because some have been greedy and not allowed others to take, but there's enough, right? And
Yeah.
so, that's one of the messages for founders that are probably listening. There's enough. Just be resourceful, be smart about it, be bootstrapped about it, be empathetic, be charismatic. All of that is the whole package. So Andy, let's talk a little bit about your exit. So how many exits have you had? If you
So I've
can
had,
share. Or
yep. So I exited business number one in 2012, and it was for the financial folks out there, considered a recap by a private equity company. So private equity bought us. Had
yeah,
an exit in 2020 to a strategic buyer, so a totally different buyer persona.
right.
And then have had some businesses go completely belly up, which were total dumpster fires. That's an exit. That's a big fat zero. That's in fact
Yeah.
even negative. So I've
And
had,
they happen. Yeah.
and they happen. So I had three or four. Anything else would have been a really small, like just a flip. But I've
Right.
had two really good exits, and then one really big dumpster fire.
Yeah. So, okay, I love talking to you because you talk about a lot of the things that I already have in my head. Okay. So first question, your first exit, how did it
Yep.
impact your life? Because it's the first time. And it's like
Yeah.
everybody says, I'm selling my baby. How does it impact your life to exit for the first time?
Our baby, we 100% called it our baby. That was our baby. That was the rest of our life. Our kids were going to take it
Yeah.
over, and we were gonna have this thing last forever. So we were in year 5. We had grown it to about 12.5 million in revenue. We were doing little over 4 million in EBITDA, right? And so good
Nice.
little business.
That's good.
And I got a piece of paper in the mail that said, "Hey, we want to buy your business." I was like, "Oh, I didn't know you could sell a business." And I put it on the fax machine. Like we had one of them things. I put it on the
Wow.
fax machine. And 2 months later, a partner in our industry called and said, "Hey, Andy, we're looking to buy your business if you're interested." And I was like, "Whoa, two people now."
Wow.
So I didn't know brokers existed. I
Right.
didn't know anything. So I called the private equity company. I called the strategic, and we ran a process. When I say we ran a process, it was my partner and I who lived in Europe telling me what he thought, me taking that and going to the private equity company and saying, "Hey, here's our thing, strategic, here's our thing." And it ultimately was like, "You're going to pay X% of the multiple. So you're going to pay 6 times, you're going to pay 6.5 times." And we went with the private equity company because our brand would stay, right?
Okay. Right.
And
They
what I
keep it
didn't
as
realize,
part of their portfolio and then
yeah,
they continue to operate it. Yeah.
100%. And then what I didn't realize is strategic was buying us to then resell. They were already selling
Resell.
their business. So they were going to
Okay.
arbitrage the thing and then flip it.
Right.
Cool. I didn't
Right.
know none of that existed. So we
Right.
chose a private equity company. Due diligence took us 9 months. Why? Because
Yeah.
we didn't know what was supposed to happen.
Right. You weren't ready. I mean, yeah, I mean, you just didn't know you were selling until somebody said, I'm buying you. I'm going to
Yeah.
buy you. Right. And
Yeah.
it
And
happens
so
like that.
it's a hot mess,
Yeah.
man. We had 7 companies rolled up into this brand. We had
Yeah.
all these different books. They were buying a single company, so we had to create it in there. We
Right.
had all these
Right.
forensic accountants and all these people coming through our doors. Only reason it took 9 months and not 4 years was because I had said, "Hey, tax laws are changing at the end of 2012. Need to get
You
this
got to get
puppy
it done.
done by December 31st."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we got it done on like December 28th or something, but it took 9 months. And so if there's one piece of advice to give a founder today,
Yeah.
be exit ready.
Be
Be
exit
exit ready
ready.
from day one. From day
Be
one.
exit ready.
And then as far as like my life, so it changed because what I realized at that time is coming from small town America with going on vacation one time a year, never felt poor, had great parents, just lived
Yeah.
life. I saw above the clouds how everybody else was living. And I was like, "Hey,
Yeah.
this is really great. You can make generational impact now through
Yes.
entrepreneurship because
Yes.
you're able to give back." And I'll never forget my fondest favorite moment ever of building a business is there was this old saying back in 2007, and it's still around, but if you make it to year 5, you've made it as a business. Well, we made it to year 5 and we are like, "Hey, we made it. We're like going to stay around for a little while." And then we threw a company-wide party. So we had, I think, 74 employees. We invited all the spouses. We had like a full day of golf and spa and all this stuff. And we had a
Nice.
big party at the end. And so a lady came up to me and she said, "Hey, Andy, you don't realize this, but you've changed our lives for the better. You employ my husband. He works up in Chattanooga." And I was just like, wow, even now I get chill bumps. But it's
Yeah.
like, that's what it's about. Building businesses
Impact.
that impact families. Because
Yes.
if that young welder goes home to his young family and can be positive, they feel it, they live their best. So you just have this impact. Because I once asked I was in a men's small group, and I asked the guy, I said, "How do we change the world? Like, I want to change the world. How do we do it?" He was like, "One person at a time." I was like, it's got to be a better way. But it's truly one person at a time. I think he's totally right. One person at a time.
Absolutely. And that's part of your stewardship as a human here on earth. And you be a steward with the impact and the success that you've had and you're going to continue to have. And then what do you do with that? And so that is so important because helping, I mean, we can grow all the businesses that we want to grow. And, I think there is, a little bit of perseverance, a little bit of charisma, the empathy. There is a formula that you will be successful, achieve some success. But then is that what it's all about? And it's not. It's not all about that, right?
I don't know that I really had put my finger on it. I was saying things like infinite impact. We're going to make impact. I don't know that I truly signed my name on the line of no understanding that until last week. So I
Wow.
I was in Miami and I'm watching. There's 2 days of Emerge Americas, right? And they had Dame and John
Right.
come on, and they had Pitbull come on. Pitbull was like the last thing, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You thought everybody was going to be gone. Everybody came back to listen to it. And I'm watching, I'm saying, okay, this guy came from nothing, zero to hero. Great. But what's he doing now? Right now, he's focused on building schools around the country because a teacher, single teacher, poured into his life a while back. So
Many years ago.
I started looking
Wow.
back and I'm like, the people who really have this thing figured out called entrepreneurship, is to get to a certain level where they can find how they want to leave a better impact on this world for others, people out there who are struggling, who are not entrepreneurs right now, who they don't, not everybody has to be an entrepreneur, but how do they leave and impact other people so that they change their life? And I'm like, that's the calling. And so looking around always for what is it that how can I best leave that impact in the future? What can I build alongside others, collaboration that can change the world? And I think if we all found whatever's important to us, it just magnifies this place like crazy.
Right. And to your point also, for those because not everybody's an entrepreneur, not everybody is going to own the business. Somebody, some people may not be interested or just, in a different path. But even those people, their impact is their children. And if they don't have children, their neighbor. And if they don't have the neighbor, somebody within their realm, because everybody's surrounded by people. And ultimately, that's what it is, right? It is beautiful to be able to build a business. And even, at least for us, the different things that we do, we help a lot of people sell their business. We help them sell their business. And then we actually start talking to them, once we get the LOI and like, okay, this is real. But even with the guys that are scaling, like, what is this for? We have a little bit of a therapy talk. What is this for? How's your family doing? How's your kid doing? How's your dog doing? Do you spend time with those around you? Because those are the people that ultimately matter, right? Beyond the successful and the glamour of the exits and all of that.
It's so true. Right? And I thought I was this big, bad, like entrepreneur guy who could handle stress and all that stuff. There was a moment I asked my kids, I had 3 kids and they were at home. I was like, hey, your old dad here, this OG is never stressed, right? Like you guys don't sit, I'm just like living it up. I'm kidding. They're like, Dad, you're crazy. You're stressed all the time, right? They see it on you. And so it's building that, that freedom, that whatever that, you can get around that. And I think there's an interesting topic too. You talked about it with like mentoring and psychologically being there with the sellers of the business.
Yes.
When they sell their business, there's another psychological thing that happens that you got to kind of figure out and go through and be prepared for it. It's like, I see it with and I see it with other families.
It's huge.
Like when your kids leave home, right? You got to prepare mentally and physically for that empty nest sleep. Well, you got to prepare mentally and physically for that business now, that baby, if it's your baby, to be gone. And there's a whole lot of topics around all of that.
Absolutely. But the other one that is huge is that, and you touched on it, it's like you made generational impact in your kids, depending on the size of the exit. But then, the conversation that we do like a little cheers the evening before, the people that we help. And I don't believe in this good luck, it's bad luck. No, it's just like, you know what, we're on the finish line. We got this. And we're signing. There's nothing stopping us from signing the next day. So we get together and then, this is, if it's your first exit, this like your regular guy, I'm sure you're making good money, but the next day you're going to get a few $1,000,000 in the account. That can mess with your heart. That can mess with your mind. And so you need to be prepared because again, it's great to have the resources, but what are you going to use them for? If it's just to pocket them and at one point you're going to die. And then are you going to be remembered by the guy that just pocketed all the money here? Or are you going to be remembered because you are making an impact? You are changing the world. You don't need to be famous to change the world. By where you can be not famous and impact your entire community, your household. I mean, it doesn't need to be so big because you can change like the people example. One teacher, that teacher technically through him is now impacting all these other people and communities. It's huge.
So
right?
huge. And it's so beautiful. And that's it. And you're right. It's even that day you referred to, first time founder, the next day you sign, you see the wires come in, you got all this money in your account.
Crazy.
You're like, still, you think back, still the proudest moment for me is not that day. It's that lady coming up to me, right? And so it comes back to the people and the impact, and the money will always find its way to figure out whatever it is,
Yeah. So Andy, how old were you when you did your first exit in 2012?
So I would have been early 30s, 34, 33.
Okay. So after that, you got your wires, you got all that. What was next? I mean, because I know you've been, you have your own venture group. Tell us more about what you're doing post-exit in this few years. since?
So my biggest recommendation, there's lots of recommendations, but one recommendation to exited founders is to take an intentional pause, right? I didn't take an intentional pause. I got a phone call. I'm throwing the football with my little young kid. The neighbors think they don't know what I'm doing. I'm retired or I lost my job. They don't know. And I get a phone call. It was a former employee. Hey, Andy, man, I've got this business service company, oil and gas. We're starting to grow, two people, and I can't handle it anymore. All I know to do is call you. I was like, oh, cool. All I know to do, me, Andy, was to acquire the business. So
Right.
started right back up. Next day, we acquired his business. So that's now we're on the buyer side, right?
Right.
And ran that business until that was 2017, ran it until 2020. And we did the first company we bootstrapped and we're like, we're going to make dollar by dollar. The
Right.
next company we thought we were like, we had gotten non-humble. I had gotten very prideful. I was like, ha, I'm a rock star, man. I just exited this
Right.
company. Everything I touch is gold. Let's go. And we had built this entire business way over our skis. We had overinvested and ultimately we exited. It was just to get basically the cash back, more or less.
Right.
But it reminded me the importance of the bootstrap mentality, why that's
Right.
so important and why that's so critical. And it was a great business. We grew it. It was, we made a lot of impact on a lot of people's lives. All that was good, but financially, it was not the home run ball like number one was. But I then learned, starting kind of at that point, that there are a lot of opportunity in the marketplace for good businesses. How do we help those business owners as founders grow their business versus us trying to be the end all be all, acquire and build a
Right.
portfolio of businesses that we own. So now it's a little bit different, mature strategy around helping and partnering with other founders and getting in the canoe with them, being a part of the struggle, but being able to pour some wisdom and some advice and some, some we've done it before kind of mojo
Right.
into their bucket. And so, yeah, it's a fun game. I love entrepreneurship, but we've learned how to kind of do it in a way that fits us better.
Right. And it's beautiful, right? Because it's a learning cycles. And I feel like everybody I meet that has done several exits, it's like the first exit is one version of you, your second is a different version. And because you obviously accumulate, again, a wealth of wisdom that will inform your decisions going forward, your interests. We get older, we know better, all of that. So that's really fabulous. So you mentioned today, what you tell us more about your focus right now is basically pouring into other founders. You have an organization. Tell us more about that.
So I've realized that where I've been very successful and very unsuccessful, I found the ingredients, right? Like we talked about it with the partners early on, but I found the ingredients for me that makes my skills capabilities a success with a co-founder. And what that is like help. I'm really high performing when I can help a founder tell their story, help them build their teams, help them align the golden thread through the entire organization. And so I've gotten my swim lane really focused into kind of emerging and innovative tech products. And I'm not a tech guy, but I can understand how to communicate value and complicated stuff pretty simply. And so,
Right.
how do we help tech founders who are subject matter experts in their thing? How do we help them build businesses and launch businesses and scale them, and then ultimately get the right people around them to exit those businesses? So, my swim lane is kind of that tech, emerging innovative tech, really focused around the industries that I come from: oil and gas, wastewater treatment. Founded a company called Blacksmith Ventures 5 years ago because in venture number one, blacksmiths were kind of early creators. And when we needed fabrication partners, and we would go travel all over through small town America, and we would call the little fabricators blacksmiths on the corner because they were entrepreneurs. They had gotten their little
Right.
business up to a certain level, but they were scared to really grow to that next phase. They wouldn't work two shifts because it meant rocking the boat of the way they did things. And so to kind of honor them and help them sort of understand they too could have an exit, because a lot of those
Right.
business owners just turn the lights off and go away. Blacksmith became kind of a word that I love and sort of figuratively brings me back to that first venture
That's
and
awesome.
aligns me with the people we're really trying to help, which are those people who have built real businesses or want to build real businesses, don't know how to scale it, don't know how to exit it. And so helping them get the tools, the automation, nowadays, the AI, to scale it,
Right.
and then getting the right people around them to exit it. And so, yeah, I love it. It's a playground. You also, I've learned you got to be very discerning. Like I like to chase shiny objects, and not every business idea is a good idea. I've learned that.
Right.
So
Right.
you sort of, you're a constant cycle of learning. And even now, like I'm 47 now, like I'm still learning. Like even last week in Miami, I talked about, wow, now I see what the end goal is. Because I think one thing that has kept me now on the right path is getting really clear as to what I want that end game to look like. Like if I
Right.
look back, what do I want that journey to look like and protect that? What kind of lifestyle do you want? What kind of all that? Protect that and
Yeah.
impact where you can, right?
Yeah. No, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, this has been so great to hear from you, Andy. You have a fabulous story. I'm so excited to see how you're gonna continue to impact all the entrepreneurs and then make the impact in the world. I mean, it's just beautiful. We're free. Something that I actually had this realization. It's pretty silly, but enjoying life is like as simple as taking a walk and breathing. Breathing is free. Like you don't pay for air and pretty much you can walk if you want. And so entrepreneurship should feel like that. Should feel like, you can do it. You can do it. You can just find your resources, whatever tools you have at hand. And it feels like everybody I talk to has that. It's like I just had to make do with what I had and make it
Right.
work. And it's been amazing to hear. And I guess your last piece of advice, we talked a little bit about be ready on day one. Anything else? We talked about charisma. What should be the takeaway for the founders that are listening to us?
Yeah, I think if you are looking to start your business, sell, sell, sell. Learn the art of selling. When it comes time to scale your business, make sure you got the right tech and talent around you to do that. And then when you are ready to exit your business, make sure you have built a brand that is exit ready and you've got the right people around you to make sure you're systematized and you're exiting, because the right people around you will make that exit process so much different. Our second business that we exited took us 3 months and was essentially a seamless process because we knew the
Amazing.
game. And so having those people around early and through the journey makes a real big difference. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's it. That's
That's
it.
awesome. That's what we tell our guys when they sell. You have to be ready because you never know when it's coming. It might be any day. And then speaking the language of sale, where the two languages, especially when you're negotiating, is the financial and the legal. You got to know those languages. You got
Yes.
to get ready. That's so interesting. Well, maybe the next time we'll talk a little bit about getting ready because it's a whole other rabbit hole to how do
I'll
you get a business ready.
I'll tee it up with this. Our private equity buyer, when he came to buy us, his question to me, and I didn't understand at the time, was, when you hire an attorney, will you make sure you get a deal attorney, please? I'm like, huh? What does that mean? A deal attorney? And it changed the game forever for us because we did
Yeah.
find ultimately a deal attorney, but game changer. So yes, you have to, yes, the whole topic of getting
Yeah.
exit ready and the process around that and the who
So
around that is important.
we'll have a Andy version 2. We'll have a getting ready. I love to have that conversation too,
Love it.
because that is very true. And a deals attorney is somebody who knows business and legal, but probably a business person with legal background. It's a perfect deal attorney. So,
Perfect.
well,
Exactly.
Andy, we're so excited and look forward to talking again soon.
You're a rock
Thank
star, friend.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.